Who is Lindsay MacDonald? Lindsay is a guy I met 41 years ago. We applied for a job in the Evening Standard in London, in the UK. It was for the Metropolitan Police Office, and they needed trainee radio technicians. And back in the day, that was a nice job to have. So I think there was about 500 people who they took their applications, and 15 of us were lucky enough to get that job. And that was our start into radio and wireless engineering. Thank me later. Here's Lindsay. Sure. Hi, this is Roger Smith on the True Blue Lounge, and today I am speaking to an old friend, Lindsay MacDonald. Lindsay and I used to go to the Merchant Navy College in Greenhithe, Kent in 1984. Lindsay, how you doing, sir?
Yeah, not doing too bad. I've got my second bout of chemo tomorrow. First one went well, no side effects, so I'm hoping it'll be the same after tomorrow's deal. Other than that, things are tickety-boo. Just had my second granddaughter about 3 weeks ago. And my other granddaughter turned 2 about 3 weeks ago as well. So, yeah, and we're all looking forward to Christmas.
Wow, that's good. That's good. Hey, I've got so many questions to ask you because obviously our paths were intertwined in 1984 when we
Yeah.
worked for the Metropolitan Police as trainee radio technicians.
Yes.
So long ago, you know. Tell me this: what was you getting that job in the Evening Standard like I did? What was that like for you? Were you in Scotland at the time, or were you in England?
Yeah, no, I was in Scotland at the time. I have 2 cousins who are brothers. My older cousin was getting married in the May. His brother came up from London, where he lived and worked, and he just happened to bring a cutting from the Evening Standard. Standing outside the church before the wedding, he said, "Put that in your sporran, have a look at it later on," and that was it. So, yeah, after the wedding, I was putting my Highland outfit away, got it out my sporran, read it, thought might as well apply for it because I couldn't get a job up here really.
Right.
And went for the interviews, eventually got the job, turned up at Regency Street on the 17th of September 1984, and I met you and a whole shed load of other guys, most of whom we keep in touch with now.
Right. So tell me something. You were the only Scottish guy there, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. What was that like for you?
It was all right because I think some of the younger guys in our group had somehow felt that there's a reputation about hard Scotsmen. So your likes of Mark Mullins, Kieran, and a few others thought I was going to be a real hard arse and give them grief. From my point of view, I was down there to do effectively the apprenticeship for 2 years, come home and get a job. And I just remember that first day we went for this, I don't know what they'd call it now, an onboarding type session.
Right.
And I can't remember exactly who it was, but at lunchtime, 4 of us, I mean, obviously there's the 15 of us, but 4 of us sat at a table in the canteen. And there was a young girl there. And I thought, she was all right, you know. And that was the last of it. We became friends. But yeah, so that was that. So there was the feeling that some of them thought I was a hard-nosed jock. Then there was the bit of the ribbon, people calling me jock. But I think generally it was, I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. There was no one in our group that I didn't really get on with. I don't think. We're all different, had different, you know. I mean, obviously you were into night clubbing and cars. Others were more into their studying. You're like some Mr. Winters. He was heading the book, and that was him and Dominic with their Morse code,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Oh, did you say Roger was into cars and nightclubbing? Me?
Yeah. I seem to recall a few trips that you made up to the Midlands as well, and didn't get back till very early the next day, and
Oh,
things like that.
oh
But
man.
yeah, no, I did enjoy my time. Although I must admit, the first few months, I was quite homesick,
Right.
being away from home. And I mean, obviously, a lot of you guys were a lot more local. So you were on a train home, and you were back home in an hour and a half.
Right.
Whereas for me, it was back then, it was going to be like a 6 hour journey on a Friday evening,
Yeah.
and then
Hey,
a 6 hour.
hey,
Sorry, go
cognitively,
on.
I wanna test something out. Can you name some names of the people that you remember specifically on that training course that we were on?
From the Met group.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Kieran, do you want their surnames as well?
Only if you can remember them.
Yeah, Kieran Walsh, Mark Mullins, Chris Skelton, obviously Helen Batty, now Helen MacDonald,
Uh-huh.
um, Paul Warwicker, Paul Morris, Tony Quinn, Robin Dartnell, um, and then there was a guy. I think he only came for a little while. I think Robin Dartnell left,
Uh-huh.
and this guy John Ward turned up later on in the course, and he had already been at sea. And
Okay.
then halfway through his time, he decided he was going back to sea.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was on the Fife's banana boats or something like that. I
Right.
remember. I think he went to South Africa quite a bit on his trips.
Okay, your memory is
Um,
pretty good, Lindsay.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And then there was the chaplain had his room at the end of our corridor.
Uh-huh.
What was his name? He was at our wedding. He said grace at our wedding. Bill. I can't remember his surname.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You're doing better than I would. I think I've
I
got about
think
eight
yeah.
names.
Well, we had a reunion. Well, obviously we had the FaceTime or whatever with you when we had a reunion last summer.
Uh-huh.
So there's probably about half a dozen of the guys made it to that. So it was good to catch up.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, and I keep in touch with a couple of the other guys who were in previous Met groups that I worked with
Uh-huh.
over the years when I was in the Met.
Okay.
So yeah,
All right. No, well, at least
good
you're
time.
cognitively you're doing well. So,
Yeah.
so tell me this: have you, if you were eating out, Lindsay, what sort of meals do you like? What's your favorite meal?
I don't have a favourite meal, Roger. We haven't done for a while, but we used to go out for family meals, at least try and do one a month. And it would vary between um, Chinese, Indian, Italian, pizza, or traditional like British pub grub. So I do like my Mexican as well.
Hmm.
So chicken fajitas, enchiladas, that kind of
Okay.
thing.
All right.
Quesadillas.
What about drinks?
Um, I do have the odd lager beer,
Hmm.
but it's mainly red wine.
Okay. No spirits at all.
No, I do. I don't know if you can see. I've got my cask here.
Oh, nice.
So when my dad passed away, we were clearing out. He had
Uh-huh.
120 bottles of scotch that I got one year when we were on holiday, and he started collecting them, and he ended up with over, I think it was about 120, and ended up seeing about, my mum wanted to auction them off, and I was taking photos, and I'd put them out in my mum's spare bed, and I took photos of it, 4 bottles of a time. The guy knew I was sending him the photos, and he just said, "See that bottle on the right hand side of the bed? Put it on the floor, please." He said, "That's worth a fortune." So that was that. But then I've started collecting now. So I've got a Jensen Button bottle. I've got a Deacon Blue bottle. The one at the top was one that my daughter and son-in-law brought me back from the island of Arran, when they got engaged. So yeah, so I've got about half a dozen. I've got one that's opened that I tend. Helen and I don't drink spirits at all normally, but on anniversaries of our parents' births, deaths, or special occasions like that, we'll have a wee dram.
Right, right.
But that's about a New Year we'll have one. But generally it's red wine and the odd beer.
I'm
Mainly
a
have
Go
the
ahead.
beer when I'm watching the rugby or football or Formula One.
Okay. I'm a Glenlivet man myself, or Glenfiddich, but
Yeah, I've
I don't know how I got into it. But that's my drink of
yeah
choice.
yeah I've
Cool,
had a few of them in the past.
cool, cool. So, Lindsay, give me an elevator speech of not an elevator speech, but since you left Greenhithe, what your first job was, and tell me up until what you're doing now in retirement.
So my first job, um, after leaving Greenhithe, I was in the workshop repairing the hand portable radios. I was there for 2 months, and then they were looking for some people to make up the numbers up in central London, in another department called Evaluation and Development. So Tim and I went up and moved up to that department for a while, and we were there for 6, 7 months till we went back to Greenhithe. And then when I finished Greenhithe, eventually I went to field services, which I quite enjoyed because you were out and about. Um, but then at a later point in time, they were going on a shift system, which at sort of like 22, I didn't really want to be doing night shifts and weekends and stuff like that. So I got transferred into another department called Vehicle Installations, where we installed covert radio into unmarked police cars. And I worked alongside Andy McLaren, who again was in our Met group. I forgot to mention him earlier on. And we've kept in touch as well. So that was that.
Can you just go over the ages that we were when we started? What was it? It was for 2 years, wasn't it? And what I
Yeah,
think I
I
was
think
17 or 18,
yeah, I was 20.
or maybe
Um,
19 then. Okay,
yeah, Tim was he turned 21 in the February after we started, and then I was in the May after we started. So we were 21 in 85. I think Helen and Mark Mullins were the youngest. I know Helen was 16. I think Mark was round about the same age as her.
right. I was
Um,
18. Okay, I
yeah,
remember now. Cool, cool,
yeah.
cool. All right, go ahead.
So that was that. Then um, after vehicle installations, we moved. Oh no, while we're in vehicle installations, we moved over to the new building in Sydenham. Um, and then I went for a promotion board, got promoted, and went to a site installation rather than vehicle installation department. I was there for probably about 18 months, 2 years. And then we were about to put in a whole new fixed radio system, which I got involved in. So the last probably 5 years, I was involved with the trunk radio system, the development of it, the installation of it, sites, and then once it went live, the management of that system, liaising with the operational side for downtimes and maintenance and that kind of thing. And then probably 1998, it was decided that the police were going to outsource effectively non police roles. And I felt I didn't want to be just moved from the Met to another company. So I sent my CV out to a few places, and eventually got an interview with Vodafone. and got the job there, which meant moving. So for the first 2 months I was at Vodafone. I was living in a B&B out in Newbury during the week and coming home at weekends. And then eventually I decided just to do the day trip. It was like a couple of hours each way, but it was better being home with the family for a wee bit than only at weekends. And then we moved out to a little village in Berkshire, which was great. Kids loved it. The wife got a job at Ericsson. Um, and then late 2001, we get notification that our jobs were at risk of redundancy. Um, and that was about it, really. And then they said that my role and similar roles across the company were all going to be regionalised,
Mm-hmm.
and we could apply for effectively the same job, but in the regions. Um, so I applied for basically we're trying to weigh everything up. So my parents living up here were older. Helen's parents obviously were down in London at the time. Helen didn't want any children coming up with a Birmingham accent, so that ruled the Solihull job out the window. So we were left basically with Exeter, Warrington, or Livingston in Scotland.
Uh-huh.
Decided I didn't fancy Warrington. Sorry, no, I didn't fancy Exeter because that was moving away from both sets of parents. Warrington was going to be halfway in between, kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and Livingston was going to be nearer my parents, and we felt my parents were going to need support earlier than Helen's parents. So applied for the job, got the job up here, and then we moved up here. And I was up, so that was from 2002, moved back in. So I'm about 2 miles from where I lived before I went down south.
Okay. What town in Scotland is this?
So we're between the town where I grew up called Coatbridge,
Mm-hmm.
which is about 2 miles away,
Mm-hmm.
and we're about 9 miles east of Glasgow, which I'm
Okay.
sure most people have heard of
Yeah.
rather than Coatbridge.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 9 miles east of Glasgow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so have you got any vices, so to speak?
I did up until probably about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
After I retired, I would get up in the morning, do Helen her breakfast, make her her lunch for taking to work. She would go out the door, and I'd be on the PlayStation. And I'd be on the PlayStation at least till lunchtime most days,
Uh-huh.
sometimes a wee bit later on in the afternoon. And then there was a mad dash to get all my housework in order before
She came home.
getting dinner done for Helen coming in from work. So at least I'd look like I'd done something.
All right. What were you playing on the PlayStation?
Call of Duty.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm an Xbox guy, but I'm a FIFA soccer
Okay.
games. So now I play online and stuff. So, and I
Yeah.
think I'd say I'd play in a week probably 4 or 5 hours a week.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was more like 4 or 5 hours a day
Oh,
when I was when I was
hardcore, hardcore.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So are you a drinker? Are you a smoker?
Both. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Not so much. I've cut down quite a lot since I had my diagnosis.
okay.
Um, but I still have the odd glass of red wine,
Hmm.
and I've cut down my cigarettes by quite a bit compared to what I was on.
Right.
So
What
I
were you like? A
was
20 a day kind of guy?
I was nearer 40 a day, Roger.
Wow. Wow.
I'm probably down to somewhere about 15 to 20 a day,
Uh-huh.
but I'm also only probably smoking about half a cigarette.
Okay.
So I was chatting to Helen about it yesterday. She says, "Well, when you're going to put it out, why don't you cut it
Hmm.
and then have it later?" So I've started doing that now. So if I'm only having half a cigarette,
Hmm.
rather than put it in the ashtray and putting it out, I cut it and save it and have it later on.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, so I've cut down quite a bit.
What is your diagnosis, if you don't mind?
So I had two options. I had one which was palliative care. which there was, other than chemo, there was no sort of cure as such. And they gave me six
Where
to
is the
9 months
cancer? Where is the cancer?
in my esophagus.
Okay, okay,
So it makes it very difficult for me to eat.
okay.
So I can have very liquidy soups and juices and teas, coffees, that kind of thing. But I can't really eat any solid foods. And then the other route, they called it radical, which was chemo. And then depending on the success of that and the fitness of myself, surgery sometime after the chemo finishes. Um, so that's got the prognosis for that is a 25 to 40% chance of being here still in 5 years' time. And if I get to the 5 years and everything's looking good, then they treat that as an actual cure rather than being in remission. Um, so that's what we're hoping for. So I've got chemo tomorrow. I've got another two chemo sessions, one just after New Year and one slightly later on in January. And then they'll all reevaluate it. So I've got my thoracic surgeon, I've got my oncologist, um, consultant anaesthetist, and a few other specialties who will then basically sit down round the table and then look at my situation. Has the cancer shrunk? Am I physically fit enough to undergo the operation? Because it's quite a tough operation to go through. So that's all got to be weighed up and then take it from there.
You know, I would have thought that having cancer, the doctor would have said no drink, no cigarettes, period.
Yes.
Is that the
Yeah.
case?
Basically, he's because I was doing stupid amounts of red wine, Roger. I mean, I was at sometimes I was doing like 3 bottles a day.
Wow.
So that's gone now. So I'm lucky if I have a couple of glasses. And as I say, with this narrowing of the throat, that doesn't always go all the way down. Sometimes it kind of comes back up again.
Right, right.
So my wine intake's almost gone, and as I say, my smoking has halved at least, probably more.
Do you
So
remember in the 80s? I don't know about you, but it was so easy to be a smoker because it was like everybody smoked. You know what I mean? Do you remember when we were
yeah,
like
yeah.
at the Met?
I've got a photo and I've put it on Facebook a number of times. There's Helen and I walking from the dining room in college back to the sort of entrance foyer, and I've got a fag in my hand in the college.
Wow.
And I remember the first few times I flew, would have been probably, I mean, I hadn't flown before, so it would have been 85, 86. And flying back in the shuttle from London back up here a couple of times. And the you could smoke on the plane. And then I remember the first time, which would have been 1991,
They
Helen
stopped
and I
that.
went to Florida to Disney World, and we'd booked. Helen doesn't smoke, never smoked, but we'd booked smoking seats at the back of the plane, and basically I couldn't get one, and the stewardess spoke to us as we boarded the plane. She said, "I'm afraid there's no smoking seats, but you can come up and have a cigarette in the galley
Right.
at the back of the plane." And that's just alien world now.
Yes,
You
yes,
know,
definitely. Yeah, yeah. I remember that. I remember being on a Varig airline going to Sao Paulo, and it was quite normal in probably the mid 90s to smoke on those South American airliners. So it was something
yeah.
else. So are you a religious person, Lindsay, and how does it help you in your life?
To be honest, I was dragged to church as a child. Didn't really like going. Was bored, rigid with being there. Um, I kind of after meeting Helen was from quite a religious family, and I think maybe with a bit of maturity, I got kind of into it a wee bit more. Um, got the I got the meaning of it all. Um, so when we had children, obviously after we were married and we'd moved out from Helen's parents' place, we went to church ourselves and we took our children there, and we were churchgoers up until probably about 15 years ago, and there was no real reason for not going anymore. We just kind of stopped going. But it's it's kind of there at the back of my mind, I would say. Um, I wouldn't say I was extremely religious, um, and I still sometimes have um, not doubts. I don't know what the right word for it is, but is it is it as it says? You know, was Mary a virgin mum? And basically from there, you know, all the way through, um, there's some doubts in my mind about bits of the story.
Hmm.
Um, but is it a case of the story's been altered or told in that way to make it different? You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
if it hadn't been, you know, if it just been Mary and Joseph, and Joseph had happened to get her pregnant, then it would be a completely different story to the virgin birth.
Right.
So, yeah, I wouldn't say I've doubts, but every now and again I think about it and I'm thinking, you know, maybe not.
Hmm. When
But
you when you think of when you think of life after death, what comes to mind for you? What do you think happens to us when we pass?
again, up until recently, I just assumed, you know, once you were dead, you were dead. You were buried or cremated.
Hmm.
Um, Now I've got this diagnosis where it's brought it a little wee bit closer to heart.
Hmm.
I'm kind of hoping there's something there.
Hmm.
Um, I would say I'm not counting my chickens,
Hmm. Hmm.
but
You do realize in another person's world, nobody knows what's happening tomorrow. So
yes,
you
no,
could live 10 years and I can keel over in 30 minutes. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, no,
So I look
yeah,
at life like in that kind of way. Um, Another thing is, I sometimes when I listen to doctors, I always think to myself, okay, I'm feeling this pain, but if the doctor tells me it's this or that, do I set myself up for whatever to happen to me by virtue of my own brain or because of what he said? You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, I must admit, when the doctor said initially, if I go down the palliative route, I've got 6 to 9 months.
Hmm.
That was like that was a crushing blow
Hmm.
because I knew there was something wrong, um, but at the back of your mind, you're always hoping that these guys that are in that position
Hmm.
can do something for you.
Hmm.
Um, and clearly, my situation is yes, potentially they can, but it's not a guarantee.
Hmm.
So, um,
I've always thought, Lindsay, I always wonder, do we actually expire? I mean, we're just clumps of carbon mass, we're cosmic dust,
yeah,
you know? And sometimes I just wish that maybe we were taught a little bit more about the circle of life rather than this story, this that some would even say is far fetched.
Yeah,
It's up to how you want to perceive it. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And I just wish, because if we were comfortable, I always tell myself this: what would you do if you weren't afraid? What would I say if I wasn't afraid? How would I live if I, you know what I mean? We're so
yeah.
afraid of stuff that we end up not doing anything because we're so afraid. And I hate
Mm,
feeling that way. And I myself want to buck that system. I don't want to be part of any cult. I want to be able to question everything,
yeah,
just like brave people of old have questioned things. Because I just think
yeah.
there's too much cults going on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, yeah. As I
So,
say, I just think going back to the sort of religious beliefs, there are millions and millions of people, be them Catholics, Protestants, all the various denominations of Christianity, all believe. And then you've got your other religions that are, you know, kind of kind of tied into Christianity, but in their own way. So your Muslims and your Hindus and all the rest of it, they all stem from the same thing, that there is a greater being. Um, and from my point of view, all right, I may have my occasional doubts, but for all these people to believe in something, there's got to be a hint of something there,
yep.
you know. So I would never turn around and say what you believe is rubbish, because what you believe is what you believe.
Yes,
What I
agreed.
believe is what I believe, and if you have a doubt, you have a doubt. If you don't have a doubt, that's fine. That's your belief. Uh, the only thing,
When you're really down, Lindsay, how do you pick yourself up when you're really down, when all hope's lost? What do you do?
um, to be honest, I've never really been really down. Um, I
You're a
mean, I've
true Scotsman.
I've had the odd days where, I mean, certainly the last couple of months, I've been getting up because my I've been dozing off in the evening, like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then after an hour or so waking up, so I'm not ready for my bed, and then eventually I'll go up to bed about 2 o'clock in the morning, wake up about half five, six, and when I wake up in the morning, I'm raring to go. And I don't, I was up at 5 this morning putting a wash load on and all sorts of things. Um, just doing pottering about, keep myself busy. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't say I really get down. I have days where I'm maybe not so bright and cheerful,
Right.
and some days where I can maybe be a wee bit short tempered. But I would maybe put that down to not getting a decent enough sleep, or um, you know, I mean, some of the drugs that get through chemo can cause you to get um, mood swings. Not really had any mood swings as such, but I've been a bit short tempered with Helen on occasion. Uh,
Here's your
but no,
time. Here's your time to make sure she knows you just love her to bits, and
oh, I do,
it's the
I do.
drugs.
Yeah, no, she's the best thing.
Great,
Um,
great.
Absolutely fantastic wife, um, a great mother, um, and she's rocking the grandmother bit now.
Nice, nice.
So, yeah. So
I want to rephrase that question about down. So, how were you able to wrap around, your one of your parents going through dementia, passing of parents and stuff like that? How do you wrap that around your brain? What's going on?
um, I think I know this sounds, or it might sound a bit callous and not being thoughtful. Um, Both my parents and Helen's parents, it wasn't like a sudden death.
So
Yeah.
you said it might sound callous, but the
Yes.
deaths weren't sudden.
So Helen's mum, she had a brain tumor, which they couldn't do anything with. So we knew about that, and initially, although she had the tumor, she was herself, and then over time she started to go downhill and various things, and then my dad had dementia, and so we knew it was coming as well. So we had a long time to spend together before the actual end. And then we lost Helen's dad again with a well, we believe it was a brain tumor. We never ever got a proper diagnosis of that. Again, there was time to spend time with him, and say our goodbyes. And then with my mum, it was just very old age. She was just going downhill. So we'd loads of warning that it was coming. We were able to say what we had to say, um, do what we had to do. Um, and in the end, in the last days, it was more a blessing for them to not be here because they weren't suffering anymore. Because towards the end, none of them had any real quality of life. So it
I
was,
think people, that's the part that a lot of people, I think we sometimes can be selfish because
yeah,
that quality of life is the most important thing. You know,
yes,
you'd rather get hit by a bolt of lightning when you're just getting into that stage rather
yeah, yeah,
having the someone having to care for you daily and stuff like
yeah,
that. It's just soul destroying. Or if you've got something like dementia, wherein you don't even know who these people are that surround you because your brain's kind of just shrank
yeah,
with as
yeah.
far as processing power is concerned. So, wow. Hey, do you remember a job that you really hated? Have you ever had one of them? You've gone into
No,
work, your boss doesn't like you, or he's miserable, or he or she's miserable. And every morning you woke up, you'd have a stomach ache because you knew you hated this job.
when I first moved from vehicle installations to system installations, um, I took over from another guy who had been producing a document on a 200 pair cable that was getting installed at New Scotland Yard. And that was the most boring thing I had to do. And from memory, I don't think I ever completed it. I don't know if someone else took it on, but it was trying to remember, a 200 pair cable with all the color codings on each individual core was a nightmare. And I
Wow.
think that's the only time that I never enjoyed my work.
Imagine where we are now. A cable like that's obsolete. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
It's, the
yeah. I
things
just
the things we worried about then, eh?
I just plug and play, and that's it.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
yeah.
Hey, as far as the jobs go, do you remember a time when you were really happy at work?
Um, yeah. I mean, again, sometimes in system installations where we were doing jobs, I remember doing putting some radio kit in for their support unit up at Lippets Hill in their control room. And the guy said, "Oh, do you want to go up in the helicopter?" And I said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." He said, "We'll come back tomorrow." And Mo said, "No, I didn't want Mo. I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
if you
I know
remember
more.
Mo.
Yes, I know more.
He had been in the Air Cadets, and he said he didn't like flying anymore. So that following morning, we went to the motorway control post on the M11 at Chigwell to do a quick job there, and then we were going over to their support unit. So I was taken out to the helicopter, got strapped in. We went for a bit of a flight, chased some people around Finsbury Park. There had been a mugging in the park, I think. Then we went to look for armed robbery suspects over at Leighton. And then it come on the radio asking me if I had the keys to the sergeant's office at the motorway control post. And I said no. And then Mo come on the radio and said, I've got them. And the pilot said, oh, we'll go back and get them then. So we went back to Lippett's Hill, picked up Mo and the keys, and flew over to the motorway control post in the M11 and landed on a spot of like waste ground next to the motorway control post. And all these coppers come running out the building, wondering why the helicopter was landing. I just opened the back door of the helicopter and said, oh, there's your keys, by the way. And that was it. So things like that.
That's great. That's a great one.
Trips on the when we were doing installs on the boats on the river, we'd do the install, and the boat was either in the boatyard, which was actually up out the water, or it was down on the pontoon. And if it was on the pontoon, we say, right, we've done a radio check, but we really need to go and test it under the bridges to see if it worked. So we'd get them to take us from Wapping all the way up past Westminster just for a jaunt on the river and make a few test radio calls on the way when we were going under a bridge just to see if it still worked, which obviously it would work. But yeah, things like that. And out at the airport, there was another day where prior to the installation in the new radio system, we had to go around all the police stations to get an inventory of existing equipment so we could do a one-for-one swap. And we went out to Heathrow Police Station, and the inspector said, oh, we've got radio equipment over at the VIP suite. And we said, could we go over there? And he said, yeah, well, we've got a VIP this afternoon. If you go and get some lunch, we'll take you over after lunch. So that was that. So these two coppers took us in a van onto the other side of the airport, and we went in. And all it was a mobile radio connected up to a power supply.
Wow.
And we get back in the van after doing that, and we were kind of parked at the side of the building. And we said that's us finished. We can go now. And they said, oh, we've got to wait here. We've got this job to do. And it was the Queen Mum, and she was flying up to Balmoral for the weekend with her and some of her cronies. So he pulled the van round a wee bit so he could see the plane. And the Queen Mum turned up with her corgis and probably half a dozen other people of a similar age. And we had to follow the Queen's flight from the VIP terminal up to the end of the runway. And the plane in front of that was a Concorde. And we parked off on the taxiway, and we were literally about, 100 meters from Concorde. And I've never heard a noise like it when it went off.
Wow.
So it was, things like that made, there was hard working jobs, but every now and again you'd get a little kind of treat that made it worthwhile.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, no, thoroughly enjoyed my time in the police, and similarly with Vodafone.
Are you hopeful when you think of the future?
Yes.
That's good.
I don't know whether it's misplaced hope, but I like to be hopeful that, I'll get through, or I'll get to have surgery. I'll get through the surgery. And then, within a few months after surgery, I'll start to be getting back to a kind of normal life.
Yes.
Um,
And Lindsay, having the grandchildren as well, it's what makes that fuels that hope as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
yeah. I
it's
mean, when I was diagnosed, I had three things on my list that I wanted to see. One was my second granddaughter, who was born earlier in November. The second was my son's wedding. So Gavin was getting married in, I think it was beginning of August, but he was having his wedding in two parts. So he was having like a civil like registry wedding in Glasgow, in the City Chambers, which is quite an impressive building. And then his wife to be, her family's from Wiltshire, so they were going to have a reception a week or so later down in Wiltshire. But since I was diagnosed, they brought the wedding up here forward to January.
right.
So I'll get to see that, but I'm still hoping I'll be here for the reception part of the wedding in sort of late July or early August. And then my third
Lindsay,
was
you look
just to live as long as possible.
you look tough as old boots. Trust me.
Yeah, I have my good days. I have my bad days. Um, you know, sometimes I struggle to get to the top of the stairs. It's
Hey,
like one
I
step.
feel the same way. Honestly, I think it's as we get older, we struggle.
Yeah,
Knees aren't like they are, hips aren't like they are. I,
no,
s-
no.
I see that you and Helen travel a bit. Tell us your enjoyable vacations, places that you like to visit. Do you go to anywhere twice? Anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. So um, we've only done a few land-based holidays in the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years. We went cruising back in the mid 2000s with the children, and we quite enjoyed that. So we did two Mediterranean cruises. I think it was 2005, 2007, and then obviously the kids were getting a bit older. We spent a lot of our holiday time visiting family and friends down south, and then when the kids finally became a bit more independent, we started cruising again. So we'd done some Mediterranean cruises, which we thoroughly enjoy. We've done the Caribbean now probably 5 or 6 times over the last 10 years.
What countries
Um,
have jumped out at you? I know it's hard when it's just port hop in, but what countries have you liked?
I liked Monaco, mainly because of the Grand Prix. We walked the Formula One circuit there. Um,
Sorry.
Barcelona,
What about the Caribbean? Sorry,
oh
we'll
the
go back to Monaco.
Caribbean,
Yeah, yeah.
oh the whole place. Um, but what got us was, um, although it's classed as the Caribbean, all the islands, the I suppose it's not culture isn't the right word, but people's attitudes to life. I mean, I remember coming off, and I'm sorry I can't remember the islands because we've been at loads of them. But one of the islands, when we got off the ship, you go through the cruise terminal, and there was a guy there wanting to give us a lift in his cab, and we just wanted to walk around. So we said no thanks, and he followed us for about 100 yards, pestering us. And then on another island, similar sort of thing, we got off, went for a wander about, passed this guy sitting on the bonnet of his cab. He said, "Can I take you cab anywhere to the beach or to another town?" And we said no. He went, "Cool, man," and just let us go. Um, so all the islands are they're all different. Um,
I think a lot of these third world, these developing countries. I think a lot of times the old job situation isn't where it needs to be, and when you
yeah,
have, you got tourists coming in with US dollars, euros, and pounds and stuff.
yeah,
It's always gonna be seen as some sort of an opportunity and stuff.
I
So
suppose, yeah, you don't look at it from that point of view, or maybe we should look at it from that point of view.
yeah, yeah. So you were talking about Monaco. I mean, when I look at Monaco, and I see all those people, in every apartment around that place, looking down at the Formula One. I'm a Formula One nut as well.
Yeah,
It's just amazing to all the boats, the amount of money, the fact that most of the Formula One drivers live there.
yeah,
That place is unbelievable.
yes. Yeah, no, it was some of the boats there were so big they had helicopters on them. Um, it was just a different world. Um, but yeah, but I do like the Caribbean. Um, I mean, one of our last cruises in the Caribbean, well, it was probably two cruises ago. Um, we'd gone out in mid March for 2 weeks, and we had our first day was in Puerto Rico. Was it Puerto Rico? We got off and we went to a sloth sanctuary, and then back on the ship. The second day was a part transit of the Panama Canal. Um, so they were supposed to be letting people off in Gatun Lake, and then those who went off stay on the ship, and then we'd go back through the Panama Canal back into the Caribbean and pick up the people who'd gone on excursions from Colon. But they did that, and then everyone got back on the boat, and I can't remember the next port of call. But that was when COVID happened, and all the islands closed down. So we spent a week basically cruising around, not getting off the boat, which was good in some respects because they were opening the bar at 9 o'clock in the morning. They increased the entertainment, they increased the food. So that was quite good from that point of view.
So what was this? An MSC cruise, a Virgin, a Royal
No, it
Caribbean?
was Marella.
Okay,
So way back in the day, it used to be Thomson Cruises, and I vowed, having seen their ships when we first went cruising, I would never go on a Thomson cruise.
right.
And we just happened to be up at our travel agent, and she said, "Oh, we're getting two new ships for next season, and they're ex-Royal Caribbean." So I did a bit of digging and delving, and they looked quite good, bit modern compared to the old Thomson ships. So I thought we'll give it a go, and it was fab.
Right.
But the the service from the staff is second to none. So couldn't fault them. Obviously, they went from being Thomson to TUI to Marella, but the parent company is 50% owned by Royal Caribbean anyway.
Right.
So
Do you know, Lindsay? When I think of the Merchant Navy College in Greenhithe, Kent,
yeah,
the part of that institution that sort of got my career to where it is or where it went was a lot to do with fault finding. You
yes,
remember the commandant, all those radios that they used to put faults on,
yeah, yeah.
and we had to
Mike
find them.
Kent,
Yeah. So for me, I got into maintenance,
yeah,
so I joined 1-to-1 from Mercury Comms, but so I stayed in radio, stayed in wireless, stayed in cell phone technology. Up until this day, I work for an operator, and up until this day, finding faults, you know, and troubleshooting is what gives me the greatest joy. If my computer's broken now, just fault finding it is what
yeah,
I love to do.
yeah.
Yeah. So what is it for you? What do you enjoy doing? What keeps you going?
Um, Mainly at the moment, the family. Yeah. Although I did have to do a bit of fault finding, I'm having trouble with the stereo I've got at the moment. was playing it yesterday, come down, switched it on this morning, and the CD player wasn't working. I played my phone through it, through my Amazon Music through it, and I couldn't get that to work. Put it onto the tuner. The tuner was working fine. Had a bit of jigging about with it, and then it all started working again. So never got to the bottom of where the fault was, but it's working, so that's all that matters.
Jiggling the cables always helps, you know,
Yeah,
always helps.
yeah.
Hey, Lindsay, I really enjoyed this, man. I wish you the best for the future. And as I said, you know, no one knows what tomorrow's about.
No.
You know, I don't even know I don't even know what's going on after lunch, and it's what time is it now? It's 10:54. So I really do wish you the best. Give Helen my best
Will do.
wishes, and thank you for coming on my show. And I'll be, you know, touching base with you to see what's going on in the near future.
Yeah, no, it was an unusual thing to do. Thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah, keep in touch, Roger.
I will, man.
And as I say, nice to speak to you, Roger.
Nice, man. Thank you very much.
No problem. Take care.